Hello there and welcome to Unqualified Opinions. I'm Marko Yerkovich.
And I'm Will Byerman.
And on today's episode, we'll be doing our mid-season NBA awards. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comment section down below. So let's get right into it. Will, who is your most improved player this season?
For my most improved player, I'm going to pick Jeremy Grant. He signed a big deal with the Detroit Pistons over the offseason. It was pretty maligned at the time as he was a role player in Denver, but he's putting up 23 points per game, 2.9 assists, 5 rebounds, and he's also shooting 36% from three, which is not really an area of strength for him. He's just really taking it up a notch. It's almost a day and night improvement. Kind of a rotation bench player who's just good at defense. Is now turned into a legitimate top piece for a team, NBA team. Problem being, it's the worst team in the league, the Detroit Pistons. Either them or the Timberwolves, but do I think Grant is going to be a number one guy for a championship or playoff caliber team? Not really, but I think he's definitely set himself apart as at least kind of a borderline all-star for the Pistons, and he's definitely a building block there. So just because of how much of a step he's taken, he's the most improved player for me.
All right, so for myself, I would have to say Julius Randle of the New York Knicks. Obviously has elevated them to a playoff caliber team. At the moment, they're kind of at the top of that big crowd in the East that holds about the 4th to the 10th seed. So they're floating at the top of that. But I mean, they are 2 games away from being the 4th seed or being the 10th seed. So we have to keep that in mind. But he has been selected to his first ever All-Star game. He's averaging about 23 points, and he's also averaging close to a career best in rebounds and assists. He's clearly the talisman for the Knicks, and under Thibodeau's tutelage, I guess you can say, he is really elevated just how he plays. There's an intensity with him on court that obviously shines through with all of Tibbs's players. And I guess Julius Randle, I think more than anyone, at least shows an improvement even on court without any look at the statistics. So let's move on to a pretty obvious one, I think, for anyone who follows the NBA even remotely. The Sixth Man of the Year award. Will?
For me, it's going to be Jordan Clarkson for the Utah Jazz. Bounced around the league a bit, played for a couple teams now with the Lakers and then briefly with Cleveland, but he's really kind of came into his own as an elite six man with the Utah Jazz. And I feel like in the past couple of years, we've seen six men like Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams who put up great stats, but I don't think they have that much of an impact on a game. Obviously a lot of points, but not much defensively or as playmakers, but Clarkson does it all off the bench. He's been a pretty good defender, especially by his standings. He's a good facilitator. I mean, he's just putting up great stats too, 18 points per game. He's got 4 assists, 4 rebounds, all around great effort by Clarkson on the league's best team, and being on the league's best team never hurts for awards.
Yeah, and that's also another factor that he is top 50 in scoring in the NBA, and he's, coming off the bench. He's a sixth man. He's part of one of the best offensive and defensive units in the NBA. And honestly, I think he's one of the best on-ball guard scorers in the NBA right now. Obviously, he's getting more minutes than a lot of bench players, which makes it pretty easy for him to win this award. It's kind of what happens to Lou Will, where he's, the sixth man off the bench, but he's third in minutes and third in shots. But Jordan Clarkson is extremely efficient, and he's one of the most important pieces for this Utah Jazz team, especially on the offensive end, and has led to them being able to not rely on Mike Conley as much as he gets older. So that'll be a big piece in sustaining the success for the Jazz over the years. But as far as this season, it's very clear to me, Jordan Clarkson, Sixth Man of the Year. So let's move on to one that is also kind of obvious, but a couple people, people could have differing opinions, but we agree on this one. Your Rookie of the Year?
It's going to be LaMelo Ball, as much as I'm not thrilled to have to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, going into the draft, I definitely thought he was probably the best prospect. Now, was he a guy I was like, I can't wait to watch him. I want him to be great. Not really.
Do you think that some injuries to the Hornets and them not being so good early in the season just let them roll the dice? Because he started out on the bench.
He was on the bench, but
yeah, and
I
then
gotta
Hayward's
give him credit.
injury on
I'll give him credit because he was putting up some great numbers, great potential off the bench. And then I know they had Rozier and Graham, who both missed a couple games here and there, and he kind of just took those spots and never looked back. I mean, 15 points per game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. He's putting up great stats. There's not much you can really knock his game for right now. Is he a great defender? No. Does he still make a lot of rookie mistakes? Absolutely. But given where he's supposed to be in his development, he's ahead of schedule. And he's kind of helping keep a Hornets team relevant right now. So he's an easy pick.
Yeah, I agree with the LaMelo Ball pick, obviously. I mean, you listed off all the stats and all the reasons. There's not a lot of guys really close. I think Halliburton for the Kings is potentially an option, but there's not, rookies are not having a great year. I think last year was a far better year for rookies, but it's not too obvious at the moment, other than LaMelo Ball, as to other potential candidates for the Rookie of the Year award. So let's move on to another far more major award, in my opinion, the Defensive Player of the Year award. Will, your pick?
I'm going to take Ben Simmons from the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, he's just made major improvements in every category. Like, as a one-on-one defender, he's great. He can defend at least 4 positions. He can probably get on some smaller bigs, like a Capella or someone. But, I mean, he leads the league in deflections per game with 3. He's a great rebounder. He blocks shots. He just hustles for it. And, he's one of those guys who really just wants to go get that award, and that makes a big difference. 14 is his defensive net rating. That's a really high mark. I mean, he's just been outstanding. And he, again, being on a winning team never hurts your chances, and he's anchoring one of the best teams in the league.
With my pick, I'll have to go with a former and a 2-time former Defensive Player of the Year award winner in Rudy Gobert, who anchors the best team in the NBA at the moment, the Utah Jazz, a team that is third in both total and defensive efficiency. Obviously, he's the main component keeping the Utah Jazz together, and especially important for me when it comes to the Utah Jazz. The guards in Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell are decent guards, but when you look at the wing and forward spots, you got guys that are subpar defenders, and Bogdanovich and Joe Ingles. In my eyes, I think Rudy Gobert has to do a lot of work. When you look at the Sixers, not that I don't respect that Ben Simmons pick, I think he's certainly a top 3 defensive player in the NBA. He's got some help with, Joel Embiid being a top 3, top 5 defensive center in the league. Rudy Gobert, obviously, he's won it before. He can win it again, especially with how good the Utah Jazz are playing. But those are both really good picks. So let's move on to the Coach of the Year award. Will, your pick on that one?
I'm going to take Quinn Snyder from the Utah Jazz. I mean, they have the best record in the league right now, and that's always going to do you a lot of favors, but they're just playing an extremely, first, aesthetically pleasing and also just game-winning brand of basketball. Heavy in three-point shots, good defense. They run a clean offense. They run a clean defense. He's just anchoring a team. It's hard to point out good coaching, especially when you have so many talented guys, but, I mean, there are guys like Nurse and Snyder. You can just see the extra creativity and the set plays they run and their defensive strategies. He's just far and away been the best coach for me. I think if I had to make another one, you could give Thibodeau a little bit of credit for the Knicks, but Snyder's a pretty easy choice for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of other picks. Thibodeau for the Knicks, like you mentioned, and probably Doc Rivers for resetting and reestablishing the dominance of the 76ers. And, there's a couple other options, but, none more clear than Quinn Snyder, as the Jazz are going to far and away finish with the best record, at least projected, in the NBA. He has far and away elevated all of the players. They are far better as a whole than they are individually. Even guys like Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell that are, all-stars and high-caliber talents, they play far better in his system and in his way of playing than they would outside of it. I think Quinn Snyder, not only, this isn't a one-off. We've seen him continually elevate the talents of players that are better in Utah than anywhere else in the NBA. I certainly think he's a top 5, if not a top 3 NBA coach. So we both go with Quinn Snyder on that one. So last but not least, the NBA MVP. Who's your pick?
It's really hard for me to make this pick just because I'm a huge Luka Doncic guy, Mavericks guy, but I'm going to take Joel Embiid. Just at this point in the season, the Mavericks are struggling, and it's hard to win the MVP award when your team isn't one of the best. I mean, I think Russell Westbrook's the only guy in the last couple of years who's won the MVP award while on a subpar team. I mean, the Mavericks are currently outside the playoff picture. Proud to say back over 500, but Embiid just putting up some monster numbers for one of the best teams in the league. 29 points per game, 11 rebounds. He's shooting 41% from the field, 52% on field goal rating, PR's 31. I mean, Joel's just kind of doing it all right now. He's just been a different kind of dominant. He had a 50-point game. I mean, it's going to be tough for him in some ways to get votes as a center, I think. And I really wouldn't be shocked at all if Luka could come from behind and take this one. But right now, I think it's Embiid's award to lose.
So, surprisingly, the Mavericks fan not going with Doncic, but I will. I think Luka Doncic is far and away the best player in the NBA, both in his cumulative statistical output, but also in his offensive efficiency. He's not a bad defender either, which certainly helps when it comes to the MVP. I respect the Embiid thing because it's always a safe bet to go with the best player on one of the best teams. And you did mention the standing currently of the Mavericks. I will say they're tied for 9th in the West, and they're 2 games out of the 5th seed, 4 games out of the 4th seed. So a winning, and they've won, I believe, 6 out of their last 7. So a continued burst of winning could easily put them middle of the pack in the West, which is certainly enough for a guy who's averaging 28, 8.5, and 9 assists to win the MVP in my eyes, with as good of an offensive output as we've seen in NBA history. Any other last thoughts on all these awards? Things that could change in the second half of the season, in your opinion? Again,
I wouldn't be surprised to see Luka or Jokic make a strong run at that MVP award. I'm just going with Embiid for now, but I think rookie of the year is probably pretty locked up at this point.
You know what would be really crazy? The Phoenix Suns are top 4, fighting for top 2 potentially in the West. If Devin Booker really continues to take off and averages like 36 and 6, and the Suns are 1st or 2nd in the West, what would happen if he finishes top 5 in the MVP but wasn't an all-star? I mean, he could win the MVP potentially. I think he's certainly on the outside looking in right now, but it's not out of the question, in my opinion, that he's on the short list.
It's definitely plausible. I think Chris Paul honestly hurts him a bit, just because people generally like MVPs who do most of the heavy lifting there, and Chris Paul doesn't put up enough stats, but he kind of does really run that team.
One more point on the MVP really quick. Is it fair to say that all 3 Brooklyn All-Stars are out of the running just due to number of games played and then lower stat output?
I'd agree with that. It's just such a bizarre. I think Kevin Durant was certainly at the top of the list at the start of the season, but
as few games as he's played,
everyone's missing
James Harden
games.
would probably finish higher in the MVP
Everyone's
voting.
missing games. It's just kind of a weird team to judge in general, because they're on 9-1 in the last 10 games, but they can fall apart pretty bad on defense. That's going to be the Nets are going to be the story of the year one way or another, I think.
Yeah, and I'll link our NBA top 5 MVP candidates in the description down below. We'll probably update that maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, probably in a month from now. Maybe we're about 2/3 of the way through the season. But for now, that's our mid-season NBA awards predictions. Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Again, for Will Byerman, I was Marko Yurkovich. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next time.